Brilliant. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone. This is quite a significant occasion. This is a meeting of the event committee. They also recognise after approximately a year it's our first meeting together. So I never thought I'd be saying this, but I'm pleased to see you all. I'm sure you feel the same way about me. It's good to see you all. And hopefully this is the first step back into a normal way of conducting our business. I'm going to move straight into the agenda item, and the first item is 1036/20, declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest. As is my way, I'm happy to receive those now or as we arrive at an item. Does anyone declare at the moment? Thank you. I'll move swiftly on to item 1037/20, which is apologies for absence. Now, I've had directly Chris apologies from the Vice Chair, Councillor Roto, unfortunately dealing with a family issue.
Yeah, I've got no others, thank you at the moment.
No apologies, okay, but we are quorum.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. 1038/20, which is the minutes from our previous meeting, which was held on the 14th of April, and I believe these have already gone to full council on the 27th. I shan't take you through the appendix, colleagues, which will speed this process up. So we have page 1 and page 2. Are you happy for me to sign those off?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And just remind, we may all need to speak up because we're in quite a cavernous room for 8 people to be in, so we might just need to project our voices a little bit more than we normally do. Okay, so we're now into the bulk of the meeting, and I'm going to pass over to David, our venues manager, Ben's officer. 1039/20 is the Guildhall Heritage Up, and we're going to receive a verbal update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to have this on the agenda to give you a quick update of status. As you can see on the screen, the right-hand image projects as it sits at the moment. And it's pretty evident to everybody that there's been a lack of activity on the external works of the site of Guildhall, certainly since the turn of the year, and has caused some issues since our last rescheduled revision a couple of months ago. And just to bring you up to speed, because of certain issues, we have taken the steps to terminate the contract of the contractor that was scheduled to, well, in fact, the contractor's subcontractor that was scheduled to do the external works. And we've had to reappoint a new contractor who took ownership of the site on Monday, just gone, the 17th of May. We've had prior meetings through that process with the new contractor, and I am confident, together with the architect, that the new appointed contractors will complete the job in a satisfactory and timely manner. The new rescheduled timeline will take us, unfortunately, until the end of June, possibly first week into July. The end of June to complete the works, hopefully the first week in July to clear the site and hand over to ourselves. So the original contractor's schedule of works basically meant that if we were sitting here today, I would be pleased to announce that the completion of the works. So it's been a hard and tortuous process, but I think we've at least got to the point where we can confidently say that the externals will mirror, hopefully, as call councillors and attendees to any future events, the interior. The sad case is that the appointed subcontractors for the internal works were the same company, and they have done a superb job inside. It's just, unfortunately, it was a different crew, so unlike the need for plumbers, electricians, etc., you don't need those kind of tradespeople outside, and I think this was just a step too far. It epitomised the image on the screen that the standard of work that they were proposing to do was just the last straw, and unfortunately, as I said, we had to terminate the contract. it has put us back in terms of internal scheduling. I mean, obviously when you've got external works going on, there is dust issues and things, although our new contractor will be completing all the cutting of the stone off-site, whereas the previous contractor was going to do it on-site. So to dress rooms and clean rooms and things like that, you know, we've had to sort of kick on the dates of scheduling those kind of activities a few weeks on. But hopefully by the time the COVID restrictions are eased on the 21st of June, within a few weeks after that, we should be opening the doors to the Guildhall. And I'm really hopeful for that because we're already taking bookings to the end of July going forward, so we've got a real pressure commitment to get that to happen. In fact, part of the process of reopening the schedule was to recruit our Heritage and Events Officer, and we had no option but to continue that process because this didn't come to light until we initiated that process. So the interview and recruitment process took place on the 6th of May, and the successful candidate commences work on the 1st of June. So that person will at least have at least 4 weeks to 6 weeks lead-in time to reopen the doors. The person comes with 15 years of experience in some very high-profile environments within performance arts, heritage development and educational projects in various settings such as theatres, stately homes, multi-use centres and even a prison. So we're very excited by what we may deliver in the forthcoming months, and I'm sure that person is going to be a valued asset to the company, to the council. So if there's any questions on this item, I'm happy to take.
Stuart?
Thank you, Chair. David, obviously the burning question is, do we get lumbered with any more costs, or is this all included within the contract, given that we place the contract with a contractor who's then subbed it out? And the second question is, depending on what comes out of the British Legion flooring issue, one would hope if there are amendments to be made to drains and air bricks, that will be done as part of this process.
So, I met with the contractors on site on Monday. I'm just going to take in the latter point first, Stuart. We did point out the construction of the ramp. You can't see it on the image, but that retaining wall or side of the ramp is still to be constructed. But part of the architect's drawing, and it was part of a revision to that drawing, would be to bring the retaining wall at least a foot away from the Guildhall and the Royal British Legion wall, so there will be no ingress of water in the future, and it will drain sufficiently. In terms, sorry, what was the first one?
But was there any costs?
Oh, the cost, sorry, the cost. So,
the contract.
and part of the reason why it was a lengthy process to terminate one contractor's contract and reinstate the next is we obviously had to take legal advice, and with our contract to that contractor, it enabled us to do it at no cost to ourselves because they haven't completed to satisfactory standards the work. In fact, the new contractor has come in at £5,000 less than the original, so we have now got a potential saving of £5,000. The only obligation that we might have is if that saving is manifested, then, and they have a legitimate claim to some of the work that they've done, which would be highly unlikely, we might have to reimburse them to that. So it might be that we entertain things like rentals of container cabins and things like that, which would obviously be rented from external sources. But we have to make sure that we come in at £5,000 less, and so there's not an issue, I don't think, on that scheme.
We'll just come back on the British Legion issue.
Yeah.
The air bricks, yes, I understand, need to be open to allow air to get in, but they are flush with pavement and could have caused water ingress going in, so that those surrounds may need to be adapted to stop water going into those areas. Yeah,
I know that Deputy Town Clerk took one of the surveyors out to the site prior to this meeting, and he will be submitting a report in terms of what he thinks has caused that issue. I know when we visited the site a couple of weeks ago, you can see that the paving, certainly outside the ramp area, is sort of flush to halfway across the air brake. So we also asked whether that's going to make a difference, but we also have to determine whether it's an internal problem. We don't know at this stage, so I can't really comment too much on that.
I think my concern was that if we're doing works there, if it has identified a problem that needs addressing, we want to be that as part of this, so we have to keep going.
So there's two air bricks, one that's into the area which has caused the issue for the Royal British Legion, and there's one that's further up into what is their kitchen, I think. So that won't be a problem because of, as I'll explain, with the construction of the ramp. But if the surveyor comes back and says that has been part causing those issues, then absolutely we should, as a committee, commit some of the savings, for instance, of this contractor to rectify problems going forward. The paving was installed some 11 years ago when I think the marketplace was re-tarmacked by the district council, and so it's been down for at least 11 years. So if there is an issue, then we just need to understand it's been like that for that length of time. If we're to make any rectification to those paving slabs.
Thank you.
So, Terry? Yeah, just a couple of points if I can. I mean, I'm glad Stuart picked up the point about costs, and obviously that's quite crucial. I can't quite remember, David, is this one being funded by an external grant? It's not Town Council's money that's paying for this work, is it? It's grant funded.
This is being paid by Heritage Pottery funding, right?
Yeah. And presumably they're sort of happy with the change.
Yeah, we've had to inform them of the change and the fact that it's come within budget, in fact less than what was budgeted. They're quite happy with that.
Okay, that's encouraging. I think it's just worth noting a sort of general point. We don't have a lot of luck, I find, as a town council with contractors. We've had, across various different committees. So I think from an amenities point of view, where a couple of contractors for big jobs, have let us down, frankly. So I think there is something as a council that we need to do, because this isn't a one-off. It is in this case, obviously in this specific job. But in terms of contractors letting us down, it's a recurring issue. And I think we need to look at how we can resolve that, because it causes you a lot of work as an officer. And in this case, it hasn't resulted in more money, but there have been occasions where it has resulted in more money. So I think there's a wider issue that needs to be looked at. And just on the personnel change, or the new personnel, forgive me if I've missed an email, but I don't think we've been sort of notified as councillors about that, other than you telling us today. And I think there is, I've made this point at full council, I don't think we've been kept in the loop enough as councillors about personnel changes at the town council. I mean, I'm not on personnel, I don't go to personnel meetings, but this is an exciting new role. I would like a paragraph or two about who the person is and what they're bringing to the council. Because I want, if somebody says to me, who's this new person at the council, what are they doing for a job, I want to be able to say, and I want to be able to say positively that this is what they're bringing, this is what they're going to do in their role. I don't think I've seen a copy of the job description, and I would like to be able to say it as a councillor. I feel a bit, ill-equipped.
Okay, just taking the latter point, it is a personnel matter that decision was set within the NHLF bid, so we are committed to that role. It was approved by full council that we take that person on. And the reason I haven't named that person is because in some respects, until that person starts, there is an option that that person could withdraw. We've still got to do, obviously, some checks in terms of after making that reservation appointment. So, but I take your point, and I will feed that back to the town clerk and the clerk personnel to try and ensure that council and councillors are kept in the loop in terms of new staff. But hopefully in the future you will meet the person at this meeting to discuss.
It'd be useful to have along to the next meeting, prior to the meeting, for a meet and greet. Actually, that'd be quite useful for me. And did you have any comments in there? Just on the timelines. July. We took in the early part, because I think some of your comments indicated that we'd still be able to get the venue open towards the end of July. So we're not that far away, given the delay.
No, we had conversations with the architect and the contractor to make quite plain that we have started to take bookings in the Guildhall to the latter part, the final weeks of July, and they must go ahead, even though we have precautions to transfer it into here. But ideally, it's got to be in the Guildhall, so we have stressed the fact that that's the absolute deadline that we're working to. I have been given a commitment by the contractor that they will work tirelessly to try and meet that deadline, which is the end of June to the beginning of June, and beat that deadline. But just caveated with the case of weather conditions and things like that. So I think we've got a bit of contingency within the absolute deadline that they've been given, and the fact that we've taken the bookings. So I'm hoping that they will go ahead unhindered.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else on this item? Move on. Thank you. I'm just going to reference some of the colleagues. Chris has kind of put something to my attention. Now we're all obviously in the belief that the meeting starts at 1 PM, but he's kindly pointed a document to me that says the meeting starts at 2. So interesting. So something's gone awry. So we might be joined by colleagues that join us at 2. I just want to flag that up, and if they do join us, I would just offer profuse apologies, because obviously there's been a breakdown somewhere in communication. But seeing we got here at 1, I'm assuming we were all right. I'll work on that basis. Right, I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, which is 1040/20. It's a marketing report. I'm going to hand over to young Tom.
Right, so with the marketing report, I believe we've all had it sent out. But to go over everything, we have restarted doing the video projects. We'll be talking at Thetford. We met with Stuart at the Black Horse not long ago and got that out, and that went out a couple of weeks ago. I have lined up several with other businesses, local businesses in the town, to get more of those planned, and those can double as parts of the podcast as well, which is being scheduled as well to work. And the media suite, which segues me into my next point, which the media suite is now completely finished. The computer and all of the hardware required is now in the media suite, so it's ready to go. And we have several regular programs for the podcast that have been that have agreed to be regular contributors, with Mark Webster, the countryside officer, the councillor Mike Brindle as the new mayor, and the recently recruited heritage and events officer. Now, with the return to posters, obviously that's the same situation as last month, where they have been finished, and all we really need to do is just to run things by Ancient House now that they have reopened, and make sure that they're happy with everything that's on there, and they can be made into the bigger A2 frames and be made to sit in there further. There's also some more designs in the works to highlight other parts of the town, such as the marketplace, and that will go alongside them. Also, not so much marketing related, but will feed into it eventually, is the booking system. I've spent a little bit of time overhauling the booking system to make sure it's much easier to keep track of when events are coming in and what things they need during the event, and that will hopefully help us with doing marketing for those events, so we can say, right, this event is coming up in the next month. We can up the amount of marketing we're putting towards that. With the marketing campaigns, obviously, we are now coming out of the pandemic, fingers crossed, touch wood, etc. So with that in mind, we're hoping to restart what we were doing before the pandemic. The key one being the quarterly flyers, which we were putting together for all the events. So the flyers that we had that were going out, hoping to restart those. Want to look into ways of getting them out there a little bit better than me going around with a box and handing them to shops themselves directly. Perhaps put them in local newspapers and such. Alongside that, with getting marketing, we are looking into incorporating a mailing list which comes as part of our website, and it's been used. It was used to advertise a new website, and as of right now, the current mailing list has 500 email addresses on it, and hopefully we can start using that on a more regular basis, where with events coming up in the next month or so, and do it either on a monthly basis, because obviously you don't want to put them out constantly and have people eventually unsubscribe or mute them, or otherwise consider them spam. Fortunate bit of news with the talent show, unfortunately there was very low interest in terms of entrance, and so we did opt to cancel that. I'm going with I believe the reason for that is the fact that, again, we are coming out of the pandemic and people's interest is getting back to normal, so to speak, rather than focusing on a talent show which has online elements to it. But it's not a huge, it's not all lost, as while in the process of it we made a few connections with local businesses that were not there beforehand. So hopefully we can use those again in the future, because they've all said, we'd be happy to work with you again for whatever comes our way in the future. Again, with the then and now section, the end goal of that is to make it so it's used to highlight the guild tour as the final thing when it's been fully completed, and of course as delays have come along with that, I have in turn had to delay the posts to be a little bit less frequent, but they are still going out. Other than that, with the monthly observations, it's been relatively quiet on the front of the Carnegie and the Town Council page, but there's been plenty going out on the Mayor's page. I'd like to extend a quick congratulations to Mark for his charity walk, which has, if nothing else, been filling my inbox with someone's donated to the fundraiser. But raised a huge amount of money for that, and that's one of the main posts that reached a high audience, reaching over 7.4 thousand people, and with over 500 interactions as well. And I believe you ended up with something like just over 3,000 raised.
3,200. You could have a picture of my sore feet in your report, if you so wished.
I'm glad we don't.
No, okay. Don't blame you.
But other than that, we had the highest post from the Town Council was regarding the metal detecting and magnet fishing, which not all positive, but did have 7.2 thousand views and 1.2 thousand interactions. And the social media data is showing that. It's showing it's a little bit of a downward trend, but that's not a sign that the media is losing steam. It's just that there was not a huge amount to report on for this month in terms of numbers. So less posts going to have equal less interactions, but as we come back to being here in full force, that's going to shoot right up again. That is the report, so if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you. Open it up to questions or comments, colleagues. Sarah.
Thank you, Tom. Pleased to hear about the email newsletter. So I think that's existed on the website for a while. So it's good that there's so many people on there. So it makes sense to use that, because I think the problem with some of our social media is with social media these days, there's so much going on there. Unless you purposely go to the Town Council page, I miss loads of stuff, and if it's coming direct to my inbox, I might actually have a chance of reading it. And I'm sure that's the case for lots of other people. So if we could do that monthly, I think that'd be really encouraging. Certainly when we get an events programme in here, or even just some of the stuff that Mark Webster's doing, dates and tours and that sort of thing. So wish you well with that, because that's really encouraging. I'm at risk of sounding like a broken record, but where are we at with the rotunda and upgrading the posters to the full size of the windows?
As I mentioned, we just waiting on. We basically need to speak with the Ancient House to make sure, because the last thing we want is to buy them and then have them go, well, we don't want that there. So just need to check with them. Obviously, we already checked with Dad's Army.
Yeah.
So we know we're okay on that front.
Yeah.
To make sure with the Ancient House that they're okay. And once that's done.
So the idea is doing sort of because the ones that you've done sort of like on public open space and that sort of thing, we've done them, so presumably we're happy with the content.
Yes.
So they're signed off, we're just waiting for all of them in one go.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine, I'm happy with that. 'Cause, there's several different ones, so
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if we're just...
Yeah, and as you said, we've got...
It filled in one go is what we're saying.
Yeah, you basically get it all done at once.
Okay.
But there's also some others. There's stuff for the marketplace which we want to try and put together as well. That might come at a later date, but that's something being discussed. So.
Cool. Again, I'm not risking sounding like a broken record, but what marketing has taken place over the last month or in the future that's planned, which isn't digital related? So I've heard about an email newsletter and podcasts and social media.
And the quarterly flyers.
Okay. When are they?
Sorry?
When are they happening?
Well, they're hopefully happening for when we reopen.
Okay.
But of course, we're still...
So just to bring you up to speed, the quarterly flyers will go out as seasonal flyers. So to try and make sure that we are consistent from our first issue, they will go out for June. So June, July, August will be the summer issues. September, October, November, the autumn, December, January, February, the winter, and then we're back into the spring with the final March, April, May. So that's the spread of the quarterly. So yeah, the first one is imminent, and actually, hopefully, it will tie in nicely because we will be a little bit more confident that the Guildhall will be reopened. We are now starting to dress the rooms and things like that, so we'll have plenty to say. So yeah, the pressure's on for Tom to get that sorted, but that's again taken on board when we talked about the marketing strategy. I think you, Terry, were the one who said about let's not forget the traditional medium, and this is the first step approach to that.
Thank you.
Can I just encourage everyone to speak up? So some of us possess softer resonance in our voices, and the air conditioning is kicked in very helpfully. We are in a large room today. Has anybody else got any questions? The chair. Tom, I'm talking about Thetford. We're still focusing on businesses. I know in September we discussed it in committee about broadening, because there'll be certain things within the town drive people into the town, and then they will engage those businesses. And I made some notes again. I think our open spaces are almost a free hit for us.
Yeah.
Castle Hill, Barnum, King's Gardens, which is absolutely a gem within the town, so I don't think people appreciate that. Historical figures, those historical places of interest, and those events of significance as well. The first one that sprung to my mind actually was Redevelopment. Some work around that. I know you've done some bits and pieces in that, so I just wanted to bring that to the fore. On the email marketing, and again, the traditional reach out, people a couple of emails from each borough council, and they're particularly good in what they send out. It's a mixture of information you need to know as a resident, even down to bins when they're going to be emptied, but also, as you know, they run at least two venues, the Corn Exchange and it shows my age, as you yeah, that's in region. So yeah, I'll ping those over to you because they're two really good examples of a nice balance between what the public need to know, also what's on the side of things. I think just checking to see if I made a note on anything else. I looked on this as well. Are you winding down then due to diminishing?
Yes, so as I mentioned, the idea of it is to finalise it with the reveal of the new finished Guildhall.
Yeah.
Because we have a couple of pictures of the Guildhall over the years. The plan is to put that as the end of that. Of course, I have a set amount of content to go, and as the Guildhall has been pushed back due to various other stuff which has already been discussed. I've had to slow the frequency of those posts down as well.
Can I just come in on a couple of those points, just to try and expand on that final one about now and then. That came about because we got Tom onto an archiving project in King's House in the attic. So there was a whole host of old photos and things things like that. We thought it might be interesting to do this then and now. As I said, we're sort of exhausting those photos, and they are, as he said in his report, a little bit samey because they're sort of more town centre type events. So we will exhaust our interest in photographs and things, but as was said in the report, what we could do and should do is start engaging with our residents in terms of asking them to submit old photos. I mean, you know, the first overspill families that came in probably have a host of you know, photos of when they first moved into the new houses on the brand new estates and things. So we can engage with that, and also with other people, other residents within the town that run very successful social media forums that sort of continue to do this on a regular basis. So we can link with them and cross promote their social media forums. So again, it gets a lot of traction, and a lot of people are interested in those kind of things. The second thing in also to understand is in terms of talking up Thetford. Talking up Thetford, we will specifically focus on individual businesses, tourist attractions and things. Now the restrictions are easing and our local museums are starting to open the doors just as we will do. We could then focus, as we discussed in a previous committee, about highlighting their reopening plans. But also, in tandem with that, as Tom said, the media suite is now complete. It's ready to rock and roll, and we are putting together our podcasts and vlog schedules. So there will be regular podcasts to get out there. So again, we have got an awful lot of our TTC events, both in the Carnegie, under the banner of Live at the Carnegie, and Guildhall Live with the new Recruit having a priority to develop live events within the Guildhall. So we'll have a lot more to sing and dance about, literally. And so we will have regular monthly updates so people can sign up to those. As well as, I think Terry mentioned, our countryside officer, Mark Webster, does a lot of fantastic work. So again, a regular monthly update with him. There are people who are very proactive and productive on our allotment, so we can do features on those. So going forward, there's some quite exciting opportunities that we can, you know, bring into play.
Can I just explore the focus on talking up there, because that wasn't my understanding when we discussed it at September's meeting. The committee agreed to expand it beyond businesses.
Yeah.
And now we're not.
No, we are.
We are.
We talked about tourist attractions and things like that. So, for instance, Dad's Army's opening in a couple of weeks' time. The Ancient House Museum will be reopening. Charlesborough Museum has done some fantastic work on refurbishment of the steam engines down there. So again, we could, but wider than that, you know, again, it's not just going to focus on business. Talking Up Thetford was trying to help highlight some of the businesses that were struggling through COVID, and now as we come out of that, there is still a reason to try and support and advertise the reopenings of those businesses, as our latest one did with Pam and Terry at the Black Horse. Great little video there that showed some of the fantastic work that they've done to try and cope with it. But also to go wider, Mark, as you say, wider and include other areas.
We'll drive the footfall.
Yeah.
And
Brendan.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I like the idea of talking up King's House Gardens, because surprisingly enough, if you say to people, I'm meeting at King's House Garden, they still say, where is it? So I think it's time that we started to push that. And I'm not sure, is the Forgotten Garden still there?
Yes.
Because that's a lovely place to walk around, and I think it's worth doing that. You know, because sometimes on a Sunday, and if you've only moved here the last couple of years, you think, I've never heard of the Forgotten Gardens. Could explain how to get there, and when you've got visitors, you take them down there, because that's how I found it. Relatives come down, and we started walking, and we saw these people coming out of Fort Place, and I thought, oh, where are you going? I knew that. I said, where are you been? She said, oh, we've been up the Forgotten Gardens. You know, lovely place to walk around, and you know, sometimes people just don't know it's there. They look at King's House, think that it's private, but it's, for us oldies, we know it's not. They can go in there, sit there and have their lunch, you know. So I think, you know, for the summer months, that's
So
we need to talk
you was
about.
going to come back.
Yeah, I was just going to highlight that. When I said businesses, this probably was the wrong term, but I have definitely spoken with some community groups and such as well. I don't like to say yes, we're doing this if I haven't got everything set in stone yet. So there is stuff in place.
It's evolving.
It's evolving.
I know it came out of the business, and quite rightly so, when we was in COVID, supporting the businesses as I was doing with the restrictions, but it seems to be evolving
There is stuff planned.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. Is there any more comments on this item? Excellent. Thank you, Tom. That moves us on to 104120, which is marketplace improvement. This is no report, and David's going to look for some steer from members. So I'm going to hand over to you, David.
Okay, can I just start from the outset in terms of, I'm afraid I still have no tangible updates in terms of marketplace improvements. We have discussed some ideas in the past. We did form a working group. We have brought back some of the ideas to committee in the past. And I'm hoping that as we come into more unrestricted meetings, we can get together the working group to establish exactly what we can and can't achieve. I think what we do need to do is to outline a real plan or decide whether to do it in bite-sized chunks, some of the ideas that we've had. We need to actively look for funding and investment and potentially sponsorship. And some of the indicative costs that we have got back for those isolated areas of improvement have come back at a point where it's now evident that we might have to go out to tender if we can draw together a plan and a specification to realise. So there's a bit more work to do on this, but I think hopefully the working group has still got the appetite to do it, and we can get together and push it on. But at this moment in time, apart from that, I have no other updates.
I think we're fortunate to have at least 3 of the 5 here. Brenda.
Well, the first phase was the electrics. So have we actually got the money for the electrics?
No.
No, so I think that was our first port of call, wasn't it?
Yeah, if I may come in, I think we agreed that was the first thing to do with the electric, and also remove those small bollards, repair or paper stations. Part of the work that they had in the Guildhall substances, paper stations have been freed up, could repair those broken ones, which would be minimal cost, but would improve the look of the marketplace. But I thought that was pretty much an agreed go ahead on that small element. Obviously, I understand the electrical work needed to get further quotes to be done with the cost implications there. What bollards and paint go ahead.
So removing the small bollards that sort of line the Shamble side and also the Guildhall side, they can be removed because when the steps is quite an extensive expanse in front of the Guildhall, so we did have the savvy to save those good pavers, and they are stored in our workshop. So when we do get around to doing this work, even in house, we can take those bollards out and replace the pavers. So that is something that we can do because we can do that at very little cost in terms of in-house project. In terms of the electrics, this is where, as I've outlined in the slide there, the next steps is to outline a plan of what we would want, because again, we can look at electrics in isolation, but we're not really improving the grand scheme of things. The electrics, if you take into consideration the UK power network works, it's going to take us over our tender limit even for the electrics. The source of power is a distance away from where we want our electric hookups on the Guildhall side, so there is a sizable fee that we need to pay UK power networks to even enable that to be live. So it then begs the question, if we're going to go out to tender, if we're going to look for funding, do we just isolate our vision in terms of putting in electrics, or do we look at the marketplace in a wider scheme? So I think there needs to be more discussion at working group level to decide what the proposal is to bring back committee. But clearly, point 3 in the next step, to seek funding, investment and sponsorship is one of the stumbling blocks that we have to do anything. There are various different people that are being spoken to in terms of possible funding streams, but these things are never easy to tie down. But again, it's difficult when you go to these people and they say, well, what do you actually want? And we say, well, we've got a few electric points that we want. We might want to put some electric heritage lampposts in, some more heritage lamps on the shambles, and it's just not thought out enough to engage them. So I think we need a next working group meeting to really fine tune what we actually want, whether it's just a quick fix or looking at a wider plan.
Do you have a rough idea to when you'd like that to stand up? Actually, I do this service, but I think all 4 of us sitting here on that. Actually.
Well, because we moved this meeting back, we've got another meeting in 3 weeks' time, which is not going to be enough time to get anything together. But if we really want to seek funding sources, we need to act quickly. So within the next three weeks, we certainly need the working group stood up and possibly come back in July, which will be as Venues and Communications Committee, because obviously they start as the restructured committee in June. But we need to do that because we don't traditionally have meetings in August. That's not to say that we can't, but we don't traditionally have meetings.
So maybe ping some dates out to us all the next couple of weeks. We can all get together.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go.
Is there anything else on that item? Terry?
Just a couple of things. Firstly, in case I forget, Chris Harvey is clearly watching at home because he's now emailed me to say he did send his apologies. Because I mentioned that. And he told me to stop looking so bored. Typical Chris. The other point, just on the sort of finance and this particular project. When we set the budget for this year, it was very much, for the whole council, very much worst case scenario, with sort of reviews built into because everything was so unknown. Being optimistic, I think actually things are going to be better than worst case scenario, and I think if we've got a number of things that we want to happen costed and actually fall through, we can then take advantage of it.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon everybody. Apologies for lateness.
I'm supposed to
My says 2 PM.
Is this a different meeting, is it?
No, you can just go into and I'll catch up with you both afterwards.
Because our papers say 2.
I know what the papers say, Dennis, is doing a slight mix up. I do apologise. We'll pick it up with you. We can just join the meeting because Terry's just talking. Thank you.
Oh, well. Do I have to wait for it to stop?
Terry.
No, merely just to say that if we can get things costed and actually fall through, we'll be sort of first in the line to take advantage when things are better than we otherwise would have thought. Hopefully that's what's David's sort of radar, that if we're actually considering costed, we can be the perfect team.
It's stolen a little bit of my thunder in terms of budget review, because again, as we were setting this year's budget to try and realise a 0% precept, we did downgrade our budget simply because by downgrading potential income, you also downgrade expenditure, etc. But the signs are that if we come out of COVID restrictions on the 21st of June, there is a very positive outlook in terms of the final 3 quarters. Some of our regular hirers, for instance, who have taken a significant hit, as we all have over the last year, have survived and they're coming back as soon as possible after the 21st of June. We've got some of our low-risk hirers back in the building already because the Step 3 allows them to do that. So I think we do have a positive outlook, and I think to budget we should be ahead of the game, and therefore we can look to try and reinvest in some of these development projects. So hopefully that's absolutely on the cards. So, yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else on that item? Thank you. Before I move on to the next item, I'm just going to apologise to the councillors Crawford and Parker. Welcome, Ken, by the way.
Thank you,
Ken was
Mr. Chairman.
really elected in the by-election that we held, feels an age ago, but it was just a week or so ago. Ken's expressed a wish in joining them, and he's come along today to see how we operate. You won't be able to vote today, Ken.
Okay.
No, you're more than welcome to stay and contribute to the meeting, but until your membership of the committee is ratified by full council. But we welcome your contribution for it. And I'm going to just offer apologies to both Councillors Parker and Crawford, because obviously it's been a mix-up on timing. You guys have got here at the time you thought it was at the start. So apologies to Councillor Crawford, apologies to Councillor Parker.
Thank you.
Dennis.
On that, as the paperwork is the published time is starting at 2, I thought by law we had to start at the time of the published paper time.
Dennis, I'm quite happy to pick this up after the meeting with you, that's okay, rather than break the meeting down.
Yesterday we had to change our meeting times because the papers were incorrect. Okay, well thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There's obviously been a mix-up. I apologise for the mix-up. I'm quite happy to investigate it later after we conclude with the business of the day. If that's okay.
Just one more thing, Chair. Where are we exactly at the meeting?
We're about to move on to item 1042/20 days, which is
thank you.
the open space commercialisation report. Brendan.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, we've got a mix-up because it says here, because the event committee was changed from the 12th of May to the 19th of May, which is today, and it says event committee meeting 19th of May at 1 PM at the Carnegie.
Well, I'm quite happy to investigate with the officers after the meeting, but what I would like to do is still continue with the business of the meeting, and then address that matter afterwards, if that's okay with colleagues.
You didn't miss much, Dennis.
Terry is bored, apparently. Terry is bored, apparently.
All right.
So, moving on, 1042/20, open space commercialisation report. I hope you've had a sip of water, David.
No, I've tried water already. So there was a report that circulated to MEM councillors, but just to give a quick resume of that submitted report, we have several town council owned or managed open spaces sites across the town, and recently the Chair and I, in preparation for this agenda item, took a walk into closed urban open spaces. The open spaces are within the remit of the Amenities Committee and includes the Open Spaces Policy, which was adopted in 2018-19. The open spaces are within, which sets out charges, waiver charges for charities, not-for-profit groups, types of events that can be delivered on the sites, and the documentation required to ensure it's safe and legal. So this report is basically, we were originally going to be sitting at this time as the new restructured venues and communications committee, but because mayor making has been set back, formally it has to be adopted at mayor making, which is this Friday on the 21st of May. So the new committee will sit for the first time on the 9th of June. But that committee will have a remit to explore new commercial potential of different areas, different factors, etc. So we'll probably jump the gun a little bit with this report. But in any event, we possibly can't make decisions on most of the potential ideas because they sit with another committee, but we can certainly explore those and defer recommendation to review it at the appropriate committees. So, as councillors are aware, the breakdown of the calculation for income for working monies for the council is divided in 55% of outside income and 45% reset grant. So it's a very important area to consider, that we try and grow that commercial income across the town council business, because then we can reinvest in all the kind of projects that we've been discussing in previous agenda items. So the report looked at ideas around the marketplace redevelopment. It looked at a potential refreshment kiosk at Castle Park. It talked about some of the improvements that are in and around the Carnegie, which is classed as the lower market, and also King's House Gardens, which is not owned by Thetford Town Council, but currently we rent the coach house from GW Stanleyford. So it was used in the interim as we moved out of Telford Way as a workshop store. That's now moved to the cemetery space. So we could utilise and transform that space for a commercial opportunity in the future. So there were basically a few ideas that were thrown into the mix for the committee to consider. So I'll throw it open to questions and ideas.
Brenda?
I'll just highlight all the ideas. You know, as you would say, we can't make a decision today, but I think it's worth pursuing and looking at. And if we want to upgrade the market, as we're saying, and we wanted to look at, you know, something there that's sold, so the Guildhall tea room was outside, so you need more tables and chairs. That sort of thing would be ideal, but we would need that to work the group as well, wouldn't we? Because if you're going to put in for a fee, you want to cover everything. But no, I thought all the ideas were quite good. As you say, can't make a decision today. So.
Can I just say one of the areas, which is the marketplace? We did discuss at a previous committee that as the new committee takes the remit of venues and communication, the marketplace isn't a venue as such with four walls and a roof, but it's so integral to the success of certainly the Guildhall going forward and the potential income generation for that committee, that we did agree that the marketplace would come under the responsibility of that committee, as did the external and internal maintenance of the buildings. So that is one that we can, as a committee, at least agree to take forward, and we have done in terms of we're going to stand up the working group again. But any other idea, if it doesn't sit within this committee, we would just have to defer some of those ideas back to those committees to discuss. For instance, the refreshment kiosk at Castle Park, that certainly sits with Terry's amenities committee to potentially look at.
Yeah, just a general point, whether it's for David or still sits with amenities. I mean, like Brenda, I like all of the ideas on there. I always think, how on earth we're going to pay for all of these things, but it's a question of priorities at the end of the day. And some of these are several years away, but not imminent, you know, I appreciate that. The only problem with open spaces, as I've found through amenities, is when we start charging for use of open space, we really have got to have a procedure in place to prevent unauthorised usage, because at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody wanted to go and pitch up a ice cream van or start organising a weekly Pilates class in Castle Park, what is the procedure for us to stop them doing that? And I don't think there is one, really.
No, there isn't.
I mean, it's probably you that, you know, has to go down there to see them or contact them. And I think, you know, it's all very well charging people to do it. I think we should charge people to use our land, especially if they're making money for themselves. But it's about stopping that unauthorised usage and having a procedure in place, which we've still not quite got there.
No, that's a really good point, because there is an impact on that open space in terms of you know, wear and tear on the ground. So that needs to be maintained just as much as a building. But currently, you're right. We have no proper process to stop that or encourage that in the right context. So again, going back, we may need to revisit the open spaces policies and procedures.
Is there anybody else that wants to know?
Yeah, I had all those ideas explored further. The kiosks situation, you say it's where you're going to get money from. But I think if you get a business case that washes its face over 3 or 4 years, we should be able to make that investment to deliver the money coming back and get a return on it. It's something a business case draft proposal could be put together and presented to the relevant committee to take forward. But whereas heavy capital, which I suspect the coach house would need to refit and do that, it may be a long-term grant funding issue. But I think working up more detailed costs is a useful thing to do, so that you can go back to funders as well as put the business case forward in individual bits.
It's always the public work loan book as well. I mean, I think behind some of these projects, there's at least two I think would deal with not just, we don't swear at assets. In my humble opinion, it was an over-reliant precept, which residents feel the impact of. So I would like to swear, commercialise where we can. And there's two that particularly stick out there for me. King's Garden, which quite rightly the report highlights that we rent the space off. What I would consider for storage is a significant sum actually. We've probably made a saving there, just on storage alone. And Castle Park, and both of those, it's not just financial. I regularly use King's Garden as a quiet spot to deal with emails and reflect and plan. But I'm aware sometimes, because it's a tucked away place, you have some ASB. If you develop a tea room offer within that space, if people in presence, you're designing out any ASB, and it makes our town centre become a little bit more palatable. But similarly, put something into Castle Park, we give people reasons to stay within our town for longer, which impacts upon the high street and the vitality of the town. So when we go through machinations and restructuring our committees next month, I'm open. I'm not fussed where this sits. I hope we can drive forward for the reasons that I've outlined. Dennis.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. I'm just going to support you and everything. I mean, the kiosk in Castle Park will help people to remain there longer. It will help generate things. And to tell you the truth, we need things like that dotted around town. The kiosk down by the river is run very well. It belongs to Brackland, but it's run very well. When it's open, it's very popular. And to have 2 more units like that in the town would be only benefit the people. So I'm just supporting you on that.
Make sure you want that in bold, Chris.
So what the discussion is veering to is, and I'm going to make a couple of points in the agenda item, which is the VEM agenda forward plan, which might set out a process potentially to try and take this to the next stage. But this is the danger of bringing these kind of projects to committee without any substantial information to back up the business case, because we will, as councillors and as officers, we're committed to trying to improve the town just as much. That your natural instincts will be to say that would improve Castle Park. There's a lot of people in use it. Let's go for it. So I think we are just at that stage of, wouldn't it be a nice idea? Yes, it would. And I'm going to cut across the next one. I think we need a process of, if we say that is a good idea, that there is a body or a subgroup that may be made up of councillors from various different committees that have a real tangible interest in enabling that to be realised, that get together with the relevant officers and push these projects forward. Because at the moment we are not going through a strategic planning process. We are just saying that's a nice idea, and if we had the money we'd love to do it. If we really are determined to do some of these projects, that we need to actually have the process to take it forward. But I'll probably talk a little bit more about it in the November agenda plan. So it's good to hear that there's a lot of support for some of the ideas.
Well, I'll just offer, again, it's a personal view, on the subgroups, I would be quite happy to delegate to one. I don't think committees should be working in silos anyway, because there's a crossover. Album then probably identify where there's the most crossover within the council. I suggest the majority of people sit on both committees, so there should be a synergy. From my own point, I would keep things lean. I'm not a great fan of death by committee or subgroups, to be honest with you. I would delegate to the officers and the relevant officers and the chairs to report back. But, you know, other people might wish to be more involved with that. But to bring something back to the business case for each project, I think you could do it that way. That's just my thought process.
As this agenda item is displayed, decision required. There is no decision required as such, and it never can be if we present in this format. And it would not negate the committee in having the final say to agree and eventually recommend, or even if it's delegated powers to do that, committees have the resolve powers to take it forward. So committee would still have a really vital place a part to play, but we wouldn't be presenting agenda items like this. You would have something very specific and tangible in terms of the business case, and a decision could be made on the basis of that. So, yeah.
Any other comments before?
No.
Dennis?
Just again, I mean, it makes very good sense. We're using public money, so we have to have a business plan and everything set up before we just blows it out. So, yeah, it shows that we're moving forward in our desires.
And I chucked something in the ether there. So just get a sound in. I chucked in delegating to the relevant officers. In this case, we're talking Alvin and Ben.
Yeah.
Correct, unless I'm correct, I've gone off on a tangent, which I do. And delegate at this stage to have the chairs involved and committee kept up to speed with every stage.
Yeah.
I mean, business case coming forward to the relevant committee to make those decisions.
I think I would only throw one more committee in, and that's finance.
Yeah, because they've got the money. Okay,
well,
that's good.
Good.
Yes.
And then what it does is it also brings in officer level everybody that's involved with those committees. So you have a really rounded, robust subgroup that can put together these working plans. So yeah. Excellent.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item 1043/20 is the end of the year financial report. You might want to top that glass up, maybe. It's over at 5.
So again, the COVID has played its part in and actually devastating our plans for the whole of 2019. 2020-21, and it's reflected in that report. You can see that there's the column that was the revised budget that we took out in November, and again we went into major lockdown after a slight easement of restrictions throughout the summer. And again, all the possible potential of generating some kind of income was blown totally, and you can see that the performance against income was absolutely devastating. Which is really sad, because as we entered year end last year, we did have a very positive outlook in terms of going forward into last year. But on March 23rd, before we even got to the end of last year, we were in total lockdown, and all those plans went by the wayside. Moving forward, and I don't want to just deflect from this, I'll come back to this for councillors in a second, but just moving forward, we can say that most of our bookings from last year, which was a positive outlook, have rebooked for this year. So all of those party hires, wedding receptions, all those kind of celebrations, 25th anniversaries, all that kind of stuff, they've almost delayed the celebration, as we all have had to do, and rebook for this year. So we've got a decent order book going forward, and again we can certainly work hard to fill those gaps. So looking forward, we've got a positive year, but it doesn't reflect from the fact that last year was absolutely devastating. And again, the only thing that we can say is that expenditure did mirror the lack of income. So I don't think we necessarily overspent in terms of aligned income. So, any questions?
Brenda.
Yeah, just a quick one really. Obviously,
Sorry, the air conditioning's kicked
sorry, I've
up.
got headaches. So
Sorry.
a bit hard to shout. Yeah, obviously we knew this was going to happen because of COVID. We would start to lose money within the Carnegie Guildhall. But going forward, what's happening about the tea rooms then? Because obviously it can't open yet because they've got the steps and that. So what plans have you got for the tea room?
Well, going
someone to run it, or
going forward, again, COVID is still impacting on this year because the restrictions are not totally eased, if it all goes to plan, until the 21st of June. So we have lost 6 weeks potentially of that first quarter. We have some low risk hirers in the building at the moment because that's what step 3 dictates, no hours. We have taken on more bookings from hirers such as the NHS blood donor service, who unfortunately couldn't go to some of their usual venues because they were in total closure, because they were smaller venues and didn't have the capacity to do it under COVID restrictions. So we've picked up some additional hires from those regulars such as them. In terms of the tea room, as we discussed within committee, we have taken the tea room back in-house, and that is the plan. And as we discussed in the previous committee, it will be staffed and managed and run by ourselves. So we will have a tea room supervisor that if I was Mystic Meg and had a crystal ball, I could tell you definitely, but we've hired we've recruited, the Heritage and Events Officer, and I'm just trying to play that game so it doesn't impact my budget going forward, in terms of when is the ideal time to recruit that person so we can virtually open the doors quickly. As councillors have met earlier, we have Benjamin on staff now, and his remit is venues and hospitality, so he's doing a lot of the legwork in terms of trying to get us ready to reopen the doors for various different hospitality settings, tea room being one of them. The tea room supervisor will report to Benjamin in the future. So we do need to recruit a tea room supervisor, but again, that was approved at committee, and that was our structure was approved. So we will do that. So in terms of our staffing structure going forward, we will have a Guildhall Heritage Officer, which will focus on the Guildhall and the marketplace, which is, as the bid requires, an integral part of our commitment and outcomes. Benjamin will focus on the venues and hospitality across the board and outside settings, such as events in King's House and on the marketplace, etc. Tom is taking over some of the media responsibilities that Joe Cunnell previously managed, as we're losing Joe in a few weeks' time, as he's taken a different career path, initially at university and beyond. So his remit will be liaising and working with hirers across both venues, and also managing all our media outlets in terms of social media and website and podcast, etc., etc. And then underpinning that, we do have Ava, who has been one of our long-serving members of staff, and she will also continue her role, but also support Benjamin in terms of facilitating those newfound hospitality options. And then Emma, who's our market supervisor, she is still on staff, and again we're trying and ensure that she plays a greater role and maximises her remit. We discussed in the past that who would update the rotunda. Well, we've discussed that in some of the times when Emma's on the market, it's quite easy to go and update the rotunda unit. So that is the structure that hopefully we'll take forward in terms of trying to develop new business. But coming back to end of year, is there any other questions?
Sorry. Just on that structure that David refers to there, it goes back to my previous point about, you know, if you're not on the personnel committee, you tend not to be aware of who the staff are. I must confess that I don't know how many hours some of those people do. I'm assuming they're flexi.
Flexi hours. Some of them
are fixed, some of them are not. It'd be lovely if we perhaps as a committee have a sort of then staff structure circulated so we could see who does what, frankly, because I've been here a long while and I couldn't tell you what some of the staff, what their remit is. I know everyone mucks in and does whatever. I couldn't tell you if it's fixed or flexi, how many hours. It'd just be really nice so we can see how the structure relates to our aims and objectives.
So just deferring to Chair, I know in June we've got to go through the formal process of the new committee and re-election, but if councillors are happy, I'm more than happy to have an agenda item where we can, one, discuss the staffing structure and hopefully get some members of staff. We've got Benjamin observing the meeting here today, but to sort of present what their roles are and what their expectations are. And again, the next agenda item will talk about how this committee will review some of those outcomes going forward.
So that's probably a really good way forward. Working on the basis we are going to get all the same time for the next meeting. We have a pre-meet to the meeting where we have a 5-minute presentation from each member of the team. And this is what I do, this is my job remit, but Terry quite right says everyone mucks in. Actually, everyone pulls together. It'd be a good understanding, particularly when we've got new people like Benjamin that have just come on board. It's an opportunity for them to familiarise with us as well.
Yeah. And Ken.
And Ken is a new member.
Great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Ken, I made a note because you made me refresh something in my mind. I would like to offer up an action, if I can, on finances. The committees are changing with their responsibilities. They're being edited and tweaked. Ken, my experience when I first got into the world of being an accountant, the finances run slightly differently to what you and I would be used to in a business.
I'm absolutely
sure. I didn't quite get my head around why you'd have a positive in a bracket, and I always knew it as a minus. And I'm just wondering, and I love this out, it might be useful for us to have a refresher, maybe that give us a refresher on our budget, because it underpins everything we do. And I would welcome a refresher of our budget, the whys, the wherefores. So I just offer that out, and if members are minded, we can take that forward as an action. I can tell you're excited. And the only thing I picked up, David, you quite rightly, within the report, it identifies that we all know the reasons why. And we've had a drop in our income from the market fees because the non-essential traders have been excluded, and our market was under pressure anyway, prior to that. Is there anything we've got planned going forward where we can support the growth from our market or getting the non-essential retailers to re-engage and be a bit more consistent in their attendance?
In terms of attendance, our market trader status dictates that they can either become a regular trader, which means they pay their tolls up front a month in advance, or they are a casual trader. A casual trader pays each market visit, But what that also brings is an inconsistency in terms of their attendance, because every market trader thinks that they are the best weather forecaster in the business, and sometimes that's worked against them because Carol Kirkwood will tell you that it's going to rain for the next 7 days. They will tell you that they're not coming, and the next day is glorious sunshine, and I'm sure they're at home kicking themselves because it is their means of income. So we've always tried to encourage them, and we've made various different offers in terms of, we've got our gazebos that we try and offer to mean that if they haven't got those facilities, that we can loan them those free of charge in some cases for that particular day, just to encourage them to come. In terms of this process of this budget, we did a total lockdown at the start of COVID. We then had essential traders that came back. Then we had a spell where people were allowed back. Then we went into lockdown again with only essential traders, which meant that sometimes the only people who were allowed on the market were 3 particular traders who happened to be, very committed to the market and have been over a number of years. We are getting inquiries, which is a positive thing, about how do you become a market trader, how do you apply to come on. So there are a number of applications that have been sent out to inquirers about how they can trade on the market. One of the other things to say is part of the remit and outcomes of the Heritage and Events Officer and the outcomes committed to the NHLF is that we do a variety of specialist markets. So again, it may well be an opportunity that if we attracted people to specialist markets, we could also tell them of the opportunities that we have at our weekly markets. Our market space will be diminished slightly, because if we are to deliver the kind of events that we aspire to in the Guildhall, we have to utilise the Guildhall end of the market for various different reasons, but we have discussed throughout the summer that we might have entertainment going on to try and attract people to it. We have talked about an outdoor space for the Guildhall tea room for people to come and relax and hopefully patronise the market. But there will be a smaller space, so it will look fuller, but we are trying to encourage traders. But everybody is in the same boat coming out of COVID, and everybody are doing various different deals. Some markets are actually saying free trading for a 6-week period. So as most business people, sometimes they take advantage of that. But if footfall's low, they'll return fairly swiftly, as has been evident in the past. So I think we will pick up. And I know we've been criticised in the past in terms of not trying to promote the market. I'm actually on market duty on Saturday because our market supervisor's on a leave day. So I'm going to take the opportunity to talk to those traders that will be there, and I've got the impression that we're going to have our traditional ones there, so at least I can gauge their view. But what we need to do is, the last thing we want to do is advertise that so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so will be on the market and they don't turn up. And honestly, I've had phone calls and text messages at midnight with some of the traders saying we're not coming tomorrow. Now, we can then do updates, I can still work into the early hours if I need it. But, it's difficult to have that balance, because commitment with respect to the market traders is a bit sketchy at times. And we can think we've got a full market and end up with 2 traders.
Dennis?
Yeah, just on comments there. I'm one of the longer residents of Thetford, and I can remember the market stretched down along the apron of the Carnegie rooms here and everything. And you're saying we're losing a bit of the upper part of the market, but that for good reason, and we need to do what we're doing there. But I mean, if we get to a point, we've always got the apron we can open up for extended markets and everything, and been for years and years and years struggling to keep our market going, and I think you've done a very good job with what we could. So, you know, all I can do is say is well done.
Can I just come back on that comment, Dennis? And I agree. And I'm Thetford born and bred, and I can remember those days when the market did stretch down to the lower market. But I can also remember that we had 2 fishmongers, 3 clothing stores, 2 fruit and veg, and we have this unwritten rule, and we can relinquish this if committee agrees. We have this unwritten rule because of a smallish space in terms of our marketplace. We don't duplicate traders. At the moment, I've got cake wars going on because there's several cake providers that want to come onto the market, and I'm saying that, you know, we have this rule simply because we're trying to protect your ability to generate an income, and all you're going to do is dilute that opportunity. And we've done it before where we've brought people in. It upsets some of our regular traders if people duplicate what they do. I remember we had a florist on the market that specialised in wedding bouquets and things, and our long-standing flower and plant man was absolutely distraught that we'd done that. And he's been here for 25 years. So we have to have a balancing of commitment to our regulars and also trying to bring in new traders. But what we try to do is bring in a variety of traders, and that's what we're looking for.
Do we charge a different rate for casual traders and regular traders?
Yes, we do, yeah. If you pay as a regular trader up front, and again, for instance, if those traders decided not to come because of bad weather, the risk to that trader is that they've paid for their pitch, and if they're not there, they still pay. So, you know, but they get a concession which tries to sweeten the blow. If they're a casual trader, they pay more, but they have that ability to pick and choose. If a casual trader doesn't turn up for 3 consecutive weeks, because it gives them the opportunity to have a fortnight holiday, for instance, if consecutively they don't turn up at the market for 3 weeks, in the ideal times, if we had traders queuing up, we could use their pitch for someone else. Yeah, there are rules and concessions.
So I'm going to move this on a little bit, because actually what we've a really healthy discussion. The original question was around, are we really behind this? There are issues supporting our market because of challenging economic circumstances. But I'm going to park the next comment until we reach the next agenda item, if that's okay. Stuart?
Yeah, just to throw away on, is this talking about Thetford little video day we can organise with my friends just to give us a push?
Well, funny enough, when the chair took over.
Can I ask Stuart to hold that
Cool, right, sorry, Chair.
Because I think we're better off, because this item's budget, and I think we might be able to pick it up in the next item, Stuart, and I'll bring it back in if that's okay. So, is there any other comments, questions? Well, thank you for that. I'm going to move us on to 1044/20, which is the agenda forward plan, which is part of the reason I wanted to defer it. Chris, I want to thank you for putting it into the agenda, but I'm going to request in future that we have it as a separate document, because my reason behind it, I can only see on the report as far as July, and I suspect it from memory in September we're looking at the budget, and we're only able here to, I understand why it's gone into the report, I appreciate what's happened there. I think this is an older version of the document, because it doesn't show, I think the version both David and I see, items drop into a complete column. Yeah, and because it only goes as far as July, we can't forward plan the year. I'm pretty sure in September it focuses on budgets, you know, and it's given us a clear steer. And the reason I wanted to hold back to it, because I think we just had a long conversation around markets. I think it needs to come forward again, and we look at it in the rounds. You know, there's a lot of good things that have come out of discussion around markets, and we need to look at it, not just the fees, what incentives we offer our traders to become regular traders rather than casual traders, along the marketing side of things. Also, you know, particularly bugbear for me is the appearance of the market. Actually, it doesn't always look most inviting on certain times of day. So I would want to add that into the forward plan at a reasonable point within the workload. And we have, you know, you can see there's a couple of items coming out: marketplace improvements, the mobile catering and bar services. Well, that one's been pushed back a couple of times already, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Then have you got any comments?
Yeah, just to say that this agenda item, some things have come out really well from this agenda forward plan item, and others is seemingly, it seems to me that some of the projects are just thrown into the mix because we seem to want to have something on the agenda, and what it's resulted in terms of the marketplace improvements, I've pushed those out to the 16th of June simply because of previous comments in a previous agenda item. Mobile catering and bar services, I think we need to have a more defined remit as to what we are actually trying to achieve with that, rather than just throw it into the mix, come back for me or in conjunction with the chair to give you some ideas, which leads me on to going back to planning in terms of strategic planning. So for the first time on the 9th of June, we will meet as a venues and communication committee. And that remit, and we outlined that, we did some groundwork a couple of months ago, we outlined the terms of reference to, or updated the terms of reference to dictate, you know, what it's there for, to identify the composition of the committee, the fact that we elect our chair and vice chair annually, the regularity of meetings, the roles of chair and officer, etc., etc. It then defines our terms of reference in terms of, and I think you've got a copy in the previous meetings because that's when we looked at it, previous minutes, sorry. We looked at some of the delegated powers that we devolved down to officer level, which is beneficial in terms of that we can crack on and develop projects such as Live at the Carnegie, etc., because we have a definitive sum of money that we can spend. But in terms of the overall aspect, we as a committee don't set strategic direction and operational objectives. So a committee has two focuses, in my opinion. One is an overview, so it sets that strategic direction, and the second as review, so you scrutinise operational performance. And the second one can't come unless we set the first. So periodically we should review and reset that strategic plan. So looking forward, we're talking about weekly markets, which comes within the overall concept of market improvements. Should there be a weekly market still on the marketplace? How should it be delivered? In what context is the space being used, etc., etc. So they're the kind of conversations that we should have around setting our strategic plan. And then we can then break down into tangible targets for officers and staff to work to and report against. So again, communications. What are our targets in terms of how many posts that we should make, frequency and reach, performance in terms of frequency and reach, delivery of events? We've committed in our strategic plan to deliver so many events a year. Are we delivering those events? What is the attendance? How much net income have we generated? So you can scrutinise the implications of that strategic direction. In terms of budget, higher income. So let's break it down into Carnegie, Guildhall and Marketplace, so you can actually scrutinise where we're falling short and what we can do as a committee to improve performance. Hospitality, again, we've taken on a venues and hospitality officer. So let's set those targets that he needs to report back to this committee in terms of income through tea room, Carnegie, Guildhall events, etc., etc. So I think there's a piece of work to be done, certainly as we develop as a Venues and Communications Committee, that if we are going to try and evolve the remit of being more commercial, we need to start acting and reporting against more business outcomes. So I'd like to do a bit of work in terms of trying to understand our strategic direction, and then maybe we can bring that up in the first meeting on the 9th of June, as to where we want to see this committee move forward and what do we want to embrace and deliver. Rather than just say, let's look at mobile catering and bar services. If that's something we want to aspire to, and I'm not quite sure what that means, but if that's something we want to aspire to, then let's liaise with our venues and hospitality officer in terms of how we deliver that and what are the tangible outcomes that we're going to be reporting against. So, over to you.
Okay. I'm open the floor up to comments, questions. Brenda.
I'm just doing it a bit. Just to be easier for the committees to run, if they all run like that. You have that strategic planning, and then, you know, basically we're here to question what we put forward and we want the staff to do, then we're just here to question.
Okay.
Because you put your yearly plan in, like, okay, you might change it 6 months later, but there'd be a reason for it. I think that makes meetings a lot easier.
Okay. There's a couple of comments I'll make on it. How many posts we've got out on social media? That's a bit too far down the weeds for me as a council, to be honest. I want KPIs about which way we're going, but I see that as purely operational. You know, I trust the team to get on. It's their day job, so I trust the team to get on that. So I would like KPIs about the general direction we're travelling. Totally agree with David on the commercialisation. I think the mobile catering actually has come up on that. It's on there because of conversations that David and I had, and we've agreed to put it on there. I think the challenge with the forward plan has been we've been asked in committee to drive that forward. But I think if I'm picking up on David's underlying message, we need to look at the committee's changing, it's rebranding itself, and I think the desire to drive it along commercial, so we need to drive the way we work towards that. Because we have the ability, we're fortunate within this committee that we can be a net contributor to the overall budget for the council. Just come back to my point about how we impact on residents with 3 steps. Is anybody else of our board who Stuart?
I just think, you know, the strategy ties into your budget, ties into, you know, the operational side. Whatever you set your stall out at the beginning of the year, what you're looking to deliver, sets that out, and we as a committee should understand that as a strategy or our aims for the year. So I think we're almost there. It is formalising it, probably rejigging it. There will be opportunities for us to scrutinise it. So yes, I don't think we need to set 11 posts of a social media thing, but you can set a minimum level of these things that you would look to see that committees deliver. So yes, if there's capacity or something else happens, it's good there, but we're setting a de minimis level of operational service that we want to come forward. So I think really it's an officer-led. They come to us with the strategy that you feel we need to. You know us well enough. You know what sort of discussions has been had. Set that out. We should tie into what the budget says, because of course it's quite clear if you haven't got a budget to do all those things, then it's going to be completely worthless to it. And then, you know, I think other options that needs to be discussed, because there may be opportunities that come along with funding stream for them.
Anybody else? I should close that on this then. Look forward to a brave new world. Okay, moving on to item 10.45 and 20, community engagement. Discussing agreeing consultation or media release required. I have one in mind, but before I do, I'll open it out to anybody else got a suggestion. Okay, well, I would suggest, in your ears back, Benjamin. I think we actually should promote the fact that we have a venues of hospitality on. Actually, public facing role. We're just coming back to venues being open. There are people looking to book venues for their parties, their events, conferencing. And I think it's an opportunity to say we're capable of supporting and delivering those events. It's also a way of raising our officers' profile to the wider audience. Brenda?
What we're saying is on social media, we was talking about this, was it yesterday or the day before? No, we had 2 meetings yesterday, didn't we?
Yes.
So it might have been personnel. But raising the profile of your, you know, the staff, not just the councillors, but raising their profile. So on social media, you would have a picture and identify who the officer is. Because if somebody's coming in to see you, they could automatically think you are Tina Cannell. I know they wouldn't, but do you know what I mean? They don't know who they're coming in to meet, right? All they know is your name. So wouldn't it be nice that is, you know, when they see your picture and take that to the website, that actually this is David and this is David's role. You know, this is and this is his role. We also came up with putting some pictures as you come into the Carnegie rooms. So once again, United Carey, Cemeteries, you know, so that you're actually identifying your staff. So I think sometimes when you come in, you never know who you're going to meet, and it's nice to put a face to a name.
Well, firstly, I would probably I would probably say that if we're trying to market the venues, the last thing you want to do is my face on anything, really. What I would also say, and I say this with the greatest respect, you guys are 24/7 in terms of serving and also being point of contact for your ward constituents. And sometimes that's a great job, and sometimes I'm sure that's a pain in the backside in terms of being hassled at all times. We did have a staff member who was very concerned recently that they could never get away from the job simply because they were stopped in supermarkets and the like and were identified as that person who does that. So, and it caused great angst. Now, again, I know as councillors you're going to say welcome to the club, but if we do have that, we are opening up our staff to that kind of remit, possibly. I don't know. It's something that we have to discuss with staff. I know lots of organisations have those boards at the beginning, at the entrance, and potentially in terms of the officers who manage those remits, maybe that could happen. I don't know whether that should disseminate that to all staff because I don't think that's fair.
Okay, so that's slightly deviating away
into a personnel.
Yeah, another item. I actually put something out there because I do think, given the public, I just want to check whether there's committee buy-in or not for the suggestion I brought forward, because I'm the chair currently, not the chair of the committee. I do think there's a benefit to an introductory piece around the venues and hospitality officer, given the role. And I'm just checking I've got buy-in rather than...
You have.
As long as he don't mind everything.
And that's probably a good call because Benjamin's at a level where he will be managing the environment, so I think it's good to publicise that we've got someone on staff now. And typically in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, we've got another member of staff joining us as the Heritage and Events Officer. So again, there's another opportunity to highlight what that person will be doing as well. So.
Excellent. Okay. Item 1046/20, committee officers update, and this is any information since the agenda was released.
No, nothing to report.
Let's just go back one half stage there, please, to the promoting perhaps Benjamin and the young ladies. Did you actually want that to go in as a suggestion that that's what we're going to do?
Yeah, I was checking with as long as I've got committee buy-in,
Yeah, good, thank you.
and as long as the officers are comfortable with that. An introductory piece, because I think it promotes the role and promotes them.
Thank you. And there's nothing on 1046.
No, there isn't.
Thank you very much.
Which leaves me one final duty to say thank you. I'm pleased to see you all in the flesh. Apologies again, Councillors Crawford and Parker, for the mix-up on the timings. And I've closed the meeting.
Thank you for such a short meeting.
Did you not get the email?